Hello there. One of the biggest problems at the moment, especially highlighted by COVID, is the realisation of how vulnerable we're actually we are as a civilization. We're a very vulnerable sort of animal. We are sort of meddling along, trying best to sort of make sense of what's happening. And one of the biggest problems that's been highlighted with my own understanding and how I've gathered intelligence and read books and learnt stuff and introspected my mind is that one of the biggest problems of humanity is we're actually unconscious of some actual truthful knowledge that we just don't know. And there's a reason that we don't know it. And the reason is we do not learn about this stuff that we should learn about and we should know. Now, one of the things that you might not know is that your mind has mechanisms, and we label these mechanisms mental health, but they have mechanisms in place for your reactions to life. You're a human being with emotions and you're reacting to whatever happens externally. And unfortunately, we've never been told that that external environment doesn't actually have to affect us. You see, you can be an experiencer of the experience, or you could actually take your psyche into a different dimension where you realise that it's not as bad as you think. You're the experiencer in the reality, but the reality has different alternatives. It means that bad news can be turned into good news, negative can be turned into positives. You have the ability to perceive. You can take your worst bit of luck and have it as a driving force to move you forward to something great. And some people get this from an early age. Some people just know, not the real knowledge and understanding of it, but they have enough good mechanical systems in place for them to drive forward and get their goals. But on the whole, 95%, possibly even more, of the population of the world are very unconscious. And that unconscious can also be called ignorant. They do not know knowledge that will help them. So let's take a few simple things where we can break this down. You go to the doctor because the doctor has learnt about medical ailments. So you can go with a rash, a mark, a cough, a simple physical problem, and 9 times out of 10, because that's his job to know this, to learn this, to have a degree in this, he probably knows what area to look at to give you a diagnosis of the problem. And then there's extra variables that come off that. That is a form of intelligence, and unfortunately the intelligence that I'm talking about is again something that you have to learn the same way, but it's not a huge textbook that you have to read from. It's a very simple end product, which is you becoming conscious of the way that your mind works and the way that the world works. You see, at the moment, scientifically put, we are just a process, an action, an evolutionary mechanism. And that's a ugly way to put something that's actually quite amazing. There's a lot of magic that's not ever been measured and can't be measured, and that's the conscious realm, the realm of consciousness, can be not viewed as we can see it, but we know that it exists. And that's very difficult to put down into a scientific mode. But again, we see that consciousness seems to either derive from matter or could be the perceiver of matter. There's different theories on this possibility, but it doesn't really matter in a sense, because what we're trying to do is break down what that means for us on this level, this very lower level of you just living a life. Now, at the moment, you might have been primed to just believe that life is just about you feeling as happy as you can for the most amount of time that you can. And you will probably have been sort of sucked into a system where you've got a job, you've got a house, you've got a family, and you're surviving with all these sort of this is just the way it is, and there's no more searching for you to do. If you have a mental health problem, or you suffer from some sort of terrible trauma, this starts to make you question this structure, this solid egoic platform that you have. And when you start questioning this, you start to become more aware to further possibilities. And again, you can get drawn into religions, ideologies, dogmas, spirituality, positivity. A popular one at the moment is everyone's becoming some sort of health guru and sort of trainer, personal trainer, and you have to understand that all the time it seems that the process of being human, at one sort of perspective, is we are definitely organised in a way to distract ourselves, to keep busy, and to not feel any uncomfortable feeling. That seems to be a definite, constant system that comes up in life. Don't feel uncomfortable. Don't put your hand in fire, it burns. And when you get burnt, make sure you polarize or project into the opposite direction as fast as you can. And people have built businesses and empires on this philosophy. And some people turn to politics. Some people can just have a very unconscious ego and just think everything they say is right, and don't have even the skills to take in any new information. And spiritual people will say that this is a problem for humanity. We're in a very vulnerable position in life. We're at a crossroads now where we seem to be at our highest intelligence, with the capability of creating even higher intelligence, and we haven't really figured out where morals and values come into this. The good people want good for themselves and good for the world. We don't want to see sad stuff and death and horrible tragic murders and all the gobbledygook that we see. And there's an unconscious mind out there that doesn't care, doesn't give a shit. They will rob to survive on their own. They will kill if they're put into a position to kill. They will do anything to feel good. And it's a similar value in a way. It's very similar to a good person is exactly like a bad person. You are both trying to survive in your environment, with your experience and reacting to all that experience, and this is the way that the world unfolds around us. Now, what's incredible is that if you have good morals and values, and you have enough pain and suffering in your life, or a good experience to be open-minded enough to learn new stuff, you can go down a very positive spiritual path where you'll feed yourself lots of knowledge, and you'll actually get a new awareness down a new rabbit hole. But I've also discovered that for me personally, this leads to a very strange, contradictory sort of ideology that they don't seem to be aware that they're even projecting. Now, to put this simply, the egoic mind wants. It pulls the ladder up and doesn't have anybody on the boat because it's already got its family and friends on the boat, and the rest of the world can flood. That's an egoic mind for me, where you can desire and want just for yourself. Now, spiritual people will say there's a spirit that will be completely, perfectly loving as nature intended it to be, which there's scientific and there seems to be a dogma throughout the whole of evolution that projects this information to be true. And I've experienced it myself through a personal, probably several different experiences. And that projects a different story, that the ladder can stay down and you can come onto the boat, whether you're a stranger, whether you're black, white, man, woman. It cuts away all of the ugly egoic stuff that we see, and this is beautiful. If this is the law of nature, it's fantastic, isn't it, that it can do that. Unfortunately, the fables and the parables of life doesn't tell you that the boat will sink, because you can't put everybody onto one boat. So your niceness, your sensitivity, your compassion will actually drown you. Now, another spiritual dogma would be that's eternal life, that's okay, your consciousness. And that's an experience of consciousness through you, and to see another person drown is you drowning, so you should drown with the other person because you are one. And then this dogma, although it doesn't sit comfortable with the fact that you're going to drown by being nice, is another ideology, another language written fact. And there's a great strangeness about what we learn is in the future it changes. The lessons that we learn in the future changes to an alternative reality. It just seems that we have a discovery, or a great mind comes up with a great idea, sometimes through visualization and dreams and all the strangest ways, but the mind perceives that gravity exists, or perceives that there's this type of psychology, or perceives that this is a great way to look at the world, and the idea springs up and scientists measure it and we say it exists, and then it's part of life. So all the old dogma and ideology tends to be specific and a sort of guide, but then changes over time to a new story, a new evolutionary story for mankind, and we veer off into a different direction, which is exactly what we do for life. It's exactly what a part of nature does, a new breed of animal does. Even going out of our own atmosphere, there is an evolutionary of changing universes, because one will implode and create another one to expand, and all this sort of chaotic theories taking place, which seems to be perfectly harmonised for us to make this video. But there's something that I want to highlight, and it's to do with the spirituality side, where the gurus say that it just is love. Love is the feeling that we were programmed to always be. It's the law of nature running through our veins, and we need to express it for the greater consciousness of the world, which has already got this inside them. They just don't know it, and they need to be woken up from the matrix. And I can understand that philosophy, but at the moment I can't see that philosophy. It doesn't take part in the world. It's 95% of unconscious behaviour, which is bad for the planet, which is bad for us. And I don't see that philosophy, and I can see a great place where that philosophy can be spread around, and it could be good for us all. But there's something that stands out, and it's this theory that love would be this nature, would just be this natural instinct. If our egoic mind, and we can put the egoic mind to one side and dig deep and introspect our own minds and find darkness, surely that wouldn't, being consciousness, come back with theory. You see, the greater consciousness wouldn't need theory. It wouldn't need bliss and love, because consciousness is eternal, existing with love and badness. It doesn't need just one. It's a component of consciousness. So when you, and this is what I mean about how it contradicts itself, and even the greatest gurus in the world don't realise that their ideology that they're putting down on paper, even though they can say they felt it and experienced it, they're coming back with the human art of literature, which is, we know, dogma, ideology, and saying it and stating it as if it's factual, as if it's some sort of evidence because they've experienced it. Now, these people have also experienced pain and anger, and they've done bad stuff and they've had bad thoughts. However, that doesn't seem to be the spiritual place they get to. No spiritual guru has gone and meditated for 10 years and come back and been a serial killer. However, a serial killer has gone to a place where it believes it's God and murdered. And now this is a thing that I want to highlight, because I think it's very important for the future of life. And I don't mean life for humans, I mean life for the existence of this planet. This planet to me is was life before we was life, and will be life if we vacate or leave or die, or even change into artificial intelligence, or become the Nietzsche's Overman, or whatever the future arises for us. This planet has, by the looks of science, got billions and billions of years left until the sun burns out, and there could be a component that we make that could protect the sun from ever burning out, or even reproduce the sun's energy, so we don't have to worry about that. And I don't think that we will be people like this just dancing on TikTok and messing around, and me having to wear a Hollister hoodie because I want to stay warm. These senses that we perceive now will be far gone in this future. But why it's important to have this conversation now is to get to this point quicker. To say that, wouldn't it have been great to have artificial intelligence 10,000 years ago? If artificial intelligence came around and said that we didn't have to have a war and fight and do all this thing, wouldn't that be great to do and save all those people? I mean, how many people died in World War I and World War II? And there's most likely definitely going to be future wars in the future. And we we go back to this moral value, this perception that life is based on a positive humanistic value. And this has been proven. I'm not denying that this experience of love and bliss does exist. I'm not denying that fact. What I'm denying, or what I'm fighting against, is it's the fabric of nature. It is the fabric of consciousness. You see, I don't believe that can plausibly be true. And you can take all of the learning from spirituality for this to even observe this can't be true. Because every time we ever say anything, it's just a noise that hits the air, that goes into audio equipment, and that is nothing more than an illusion perceived by me to do, and a perception of you to hear and perceive again. And that is all that man can ever be, and woman. We can only ever be this perception of reality. So therefore, we can take all of the stuff that we know, what we even believe to be real, and accept that at the moment they are concepts. My moral value that you should do good and give back is my personal belief that you should be able to project love into the world and receive it back. And I have the capability, if I don't receive it back, for it not to affect my projection of love in the first place. So I take away the transactional value because I believe we're interconnected, and I don't need your toxic sort of change in perspective to alter my constant flow of love. And you can see how this is just a concept. It is just, again, words coming out of my mouth. And this is what the gurus turn into a philosophy book, a dogma, an ideology, and says love and bliss exists, that's all we are. And I disagree. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm going to become a serial killer, because I still have these values. The one lesson that it highlights to me is that I can perceive the world in any way that I want, and I can act in the world any way that I want, and I just happen to choose to do this through helping people suffer with mental health, which is directly linked to a personal experience that I have, which directly links to everything that everybody does. You are all unconsciously doing everything that you only know basically what to do. Now, why this is important is because I believe this lack of connection to love, this philosophy that rips up love and says there's love, there's purpose, I don't agree with that. I think this makes people feel uncomfortable. And of course, why wouldn't it? Because it's a beautiful story, it's a beautiful ideology, it's what religions and myths are made of. And for that not to be true would be an awful shame. But remember, you have the power of perception. You can perceive any story, you can believe in anything you want. This is why you can have a Birmingham City, Tottenham Hotspurs, Aston Villa fan. This is why you can have an evil person and a good person. This is why you can do what you want to do and believe what you want to do. It all starts within you. The power of perception, that you can create the reality that you exist in, and the more conscious you become, the more conscious that reality is going to become. And the more the idea is, the more that you learn, the more that you grow and expand, the more that you're going to feel this love, this precious concept that we value as stuff, as it's real, it exists. Now, if we can take away that being uncomfortable and still realise that we can perceive any reality onto that concept in its own right, which it is, it's just another form of ideology, it's just expanding another story, it's just going that one step into, okay, so the system seems to break down to love. That's the final viewpoint. We've seen it on psychedelic, head, mind blowing, strange illusions, and it comes back and it's love. It's to protect the planet. We are all one. Humanity has a point, it has a purpose. If we can break that down to, boom, that's not real, what then comes out of that? Well, we can then see that the consciousness that we just believe is everything, and we just believe that it is eternal, which is a bonus again. This concept, that this idea that we have seems to be very eternal. Even the mystery of the Big Bang and the mystery on how it's going to end seems to evade our mindset. We can see that that indicates that there is a higher intelligence to us, not the learnt intelligence that we understand, not the crystallized intelligence we've got from environmental factors and family factors, but a higher being that has seemed from our perspective to have formed a conscious barrier that is under the false illusion of love. Now, I'm not talking about this as a person, as a higher being, or even a alien creature, or a energy, or a power plant, or even a simulation. It's not stuff, because I can't perceive that reality, so it can't be stuff in my mind. But it points to the observation that it's something that we can't see. Now, there's lots of things that go back to our reality that highlight that this is actually a very important dynamic. Sometimes in the past we haven't seen something that has always been there, and we've discovered it. We've discovered most of science, we've discovered mathematics, we've discovered religion, mythical stories, and now we're coming into an era where it seems like religion and myth is dying to a more scientifical God. And what I'm saying is, again, it's just ideology, it's just dogma. We're trying to write down, we're trying to perceive before experience. Now, if you take what that does in life, it makes you more intelligent. It gives you an emotional connection and understanding to the bigger cosmos that sees that every sort of part of matter and emptiness, the stuff that can't be measured, does have a specific purpose in its own right. And we come back to purpose. Well, hey, purpose has come back into the room. But its purpose isn't based on love. The human ideology is, of course, love. Nature is more, you would say, survival, grow, prosper. You could say consciousness has purpose to view itself and to experience that consciousness exists, and it could be evolving to a greater philosophy than we could ever imagine, where we don't have to ever worry about death, COVID, illness, murder. We are plugged into simulations and experience eternal life and only produce DMT that makes us feel euphoric. And this is just one thought away. in the near future. Now, going back to this greater being, why this is important. It is important because you must understand that you have the capability to perceive any view on reality out there, take it in, translate it, and then act upon it. That's the basic. Forget about the meditation for 10 hours a day. Forget about the habits, good and bad, the exercising, the polarization from one thing to another. Forget all about the madness and all the stuff that I've just said. There is one definite process that the human being can achieve. You can take information and do whatever you want with it, and you can also act in any way. That means I can have a thought now that I will go and make a coffee, and I can make a coffee. I can have the thought of 50 to 70,000 things a day, and I can act upon it or not. Now, for me, this is crucial to understand, because what I've done now is I've took away moral value and purpose. Boom, it's gone. I've took away love and spirituality and all the ideologies of the world, and I've brought it all back to this one perception that we can perceive reality and act upon it. That is a definite process I can do. You see, I can experience bad stuff. I can walk out my door and I can suddenly be pounced upon by a brutal gang that was out searching for bald-headed, bearded men spouting on about science, religion and philosophy. And I can also know that just by chance I opened the door at exactly the wrong time, or just by chance the simulation program that I am in has put me into this program which makes me suffer. And this is not painful experience. This isn't me running away from God and love and spirituality. This is me saying that, do you know what? I don't know how the world works. It seems to be organised in a way that is outside my conscious ability. So therefore I can only go towards that strength that I have, which is the highest point of my conscious ability to state facts of logic and rationale. Back to the old boring ego again. But the boring ego is part of this beautiful, loving system that flows, that is just nature, and is enclosed in this forever consciousness. And I can look at a man and think that he's evil, but I can have sympathy for understanding this crazy illusion that does develop evil men. And I don't have to have part of that feeling. And this liberates me. This brings me inner peace. This brings me everything that humanoids like me value, that we find is solid. Now, what is my purpose? Where does that leave me? If I can go into any direction with this power now, well, it leaves me with the thing that I've always had, the system that is set up. The whole fabrication of nature is developed on the fact that a human can evolve by biochemicals in an atmosphere and become this perceptor and perceiver of consciousness. And I can question till the cows come home where it comes from, or I can try and live my life to what I value and morally believe is right. I can set up boundaries. I can decide to do nothing or to do everything. I can leave a legacy or decide not to do anything and stay silent. I can make this video, or I can leave this video to the memory card of the iCloud. And I think it's critical that we understand this. because it stops you from going to all the rabbit holes that I've gone down. The rabbit holes that I've gone down to discover this has led to me having the thought that I am insane. And then the thought of me being insane is so scary that it catapults me back to sanity. And I realised that in that place, my very perception of insanity created insanity, and my very perception of sanity, or the alienation of insanity, perceived me back to sanity. Now this is all that I need to know. Not to stay away from insanity. I can now know that I'm one thought in and out. And if I'm not one thought, in and out, then who knows what it is? Who cares what it is? You live your life to this conscious awareness, understand what you are as a human being, and you'll get down to all these rabbit holes. And what I'm telling you, you can cut this out now. You can cut this out now. If you learn the basics, you can do away with all this deep-rooted, what I believe is a distraction from accepting a chaotic version of reality. To me, that's still beautiful. The fact that we can perceive it as any alternative reality is absolutely incredible. And for me, I don't see anybody saying this. I don't see anybody getting this point of view. It's took me 36 minutes to try and lead you down this path, and I don't even know what path I've led you down. It's like, it is just mad, and it's okay. Understand what it's like to be human. Feel what it's like to be human. Don't suppress anything. Walk into it, and any theory can actually be liberating. You don't need to hang on to one. I think the hanging on to one belief, and when that crumbles, it just destroys you. And that's ego death and this awakening. And then you're just trying to wake up and find this love and blissful place that exists. And if you don't get there, you're forever uncomfortable. And then when you get there, you can come back and say it's your ideology, it's your idea, it's your love. This, for me, is still a projection of love in a sense, because I'm saying just, it's so simple. Just accept. You'll never know the answers of the universe, and it will never be a man-made, conceptualized event like love and bliss and nirvana and euphoria. It's nothing to do with that gobbledygook. It's where this place exists, where consciousness, this realm of consciousness, is actually being used as a yo-yo. It's just that twirly pattern in a yo-yo that spins, that you see, and you look through that kaleidoscope and see them beautiful patterns. That to me is just consciousness. It's like, it's absolutely beautiful, eternal, artistic, and I can experience it. Nothing more to find out. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to help, but if you're lost down the rabbit holes, I hope it's ironed out, or maybe just created loads more, because this is the way the world works. But you're watching it for a reason. Give it a go and leave a comment. Tell me if this makes any sense. Maybe I've gone insane and I haven't even realised it.